All right. Good morning, everybody. Friday afternoon, nice, bright, sunny day. And Maninder has got me behind a microphone talking to all you folks on our podcast number 4. Interestingly enough, over the last little bit, I've actually had a lot of people mention these podcasts to me. So, you start doing something and you kind of decide if it's being effective, if people actually want to listen. And in actuality, people are actually listening. So it's kind of cool. It makes me feel good. We wanted to talk about the placement of insurance. So everybody from the outside looking in, when dealing with an insurance broker, is they kind of give you a bunch of information. You kind of go away, your broker goes away for a while, then magically shows up with this proposal of all these insurance and the insurance companies and all the coverages and deductibles and pricing. And it's kind of like, I think what a lot of people think is that you kind of just come back, you punch all the information into a computer and bam, it all works together. I want to emphasize in this podcast the amount of work that goes into it. There's a big amount of work from a producer, from the placement group, from the account managers, the assistant account managers, from everybody that's inside Wilson Beck's 4 walls. As far as when we go out, as a producer goes out, sits down with the client, gets the information, comes back, at that point, then it's about kind of the engine. I call it the engine, right? Whereas the producer puts together the submission goes to our placement team. There's a meeting that happens with the placement team and going through and sitting down with them and reviewing what we're looking to do, how we're looking to do it, why we're looking to do it, what they're going off to try and do for us. So then they go out, they take that submission, they put it all together into a proper format, send it off to the insurance companies. And then it's about, truthfully, should be a proper 60-day to 90-day process of those negotiations back and forth with multiple insurance companies so that we get the job done right for the client. Because at that point, we should have many options with many deductible options, with many coverage options, because some insurance companies do some things really good and some for different classes of business. And that's the whole point of what we're trying to do as a broker, is we're trying to marry the appropriate coverage with the appropriate price for the appropriate client. And so that's what this podcast is about. It's a really good look at it and really emphasizes that it doesn't just happen magically, that it's a big collaborative effort with a great team that I'm fortunate to have here at Wilson Beck, that are able to put it all together into a package that's sellable for a producer to go back and do, and that's why we're successful. So again, after what I was talking about with that whole process of, going out to see the client, coming back in, putting together a submission, getting it ready for market, gathering all the information of what we're presenting, to telling the best story to the insurance company so that the insurance company feels that it's a kind of risk that they want to write. It's a kind of risk that they want to write and they want to stay on risk for a longer time period. And it's a kind of risk that they want to write, get on risk for, stay on for a long time period of time for the right price. And that's where the rubber hits the pavement, is trying to figure out how that all works, why does it all work, and who the right insurance company is going to be the right fit for. Again, going back to those discussions with our placement team. So we have a centralized placement team that does all of our marketing for us, because, as I alluded to before, with being an engine, right? Producers come in, they bring in the work. Then the account managers assemble it, put it all together, get it ready in a proper format to be given to the placement team, which the placement team then takes it, sends it out to the markets, negotiates the terms, pricing, coverage, limits, etc., comes back, presents it to the producer, and the producer goes out and meets with the client to do their job. So again, it's an engine that everybody has equal footing on because everybody is responsible for their piece of that course. So having those discussions with our placement team is really kind of the key piece, because you want to sit down with them, because again, it's always about coming up with where we think there's deficiencies in the current policy, whether it be on coverage, whether it be on deductibles, whether it be on wordings, whether it be on extensions, exclusions, or price. So all of that goes into that review of that current policy. When we go out and see a client, we say we want to review a copy of your policy. It's all because we want to do risk management. The whole point of what we're here to do is to provide that client risk management. And when we review a copy of the policy to look for, call it problems, our job is to come back with a solution, right? We're solution oriented, because if we come back with a solution, we're bringing benefit. If we're coming back with benefit, then hopefully at that point, the client is going to do business with you. So again, we talk about the three different things. We talk about where we're going out because there's a coverage issue, or we're going out because there's a pricing issue, or we're going out because we need to just get something in place really quickly. Sometimes I wish we're all afforded the luxury of getting insurance from a client and having the 60 to 90 day process to be able to put it all together. But sometimes that 60 to 90 day process gets dropped down to 30 days, gets dropped down to 15 days, and sometimes it even gets dropped down to like 3 days or 2 days. So, and again, it's always about making sure that we place the insurance, the client is able to just go on and do their business. That we don't interrupt their timing to do their business. So again, what we like to talk about sometimes is we like to talk about stories. So the first one we're going to talk about is a placement of coverage. I love to talk about some of my bigger clients that I've had for a very long time. And I'll go back to now 12 years ago that I've started dealing with keg restaurants, where when I sat down with them again, went through the process, took me 5 years. Took me 5 years to be able to get in and get a meeting with the keg restaurants where I got the opportunity to look at their insurance. And when I went through and I did a coverage audit, which is what we as risk managers, insurance brokers, are meant to provide to the client, I did a full risk audit on that policy, on their policies, and a restaurant's main exposure is what's called employment practices liability. That's their main exposure under directors and officers liability. There is other risks, et cetera, but their main risk is employment practices liability. Did a full coverage audit on the keg restaurants policies. And unbeknownst to the client, their directors and officers liability policy did not have EPL coverage. And that was I call it the biggest gap you could have left on a directors and officers liability policy for a hospitality establishment, being a restaurant. So I went out to market. I was able to get in touch with a really great friend of mine, a guy by the name of David Malhewish, who's currently over at HDI Global, but at the time he was at a different insurance company, and we had a very short time period to be able to place this policy. And David, fortunately enough, sat in his car. And again, this is loyalty. This is dedication. This is where those relationships between an insurance broker and an insurance company are so pivotal, because David and I sat on a Sunday. He was on the phone outside of his son's hockey game in his car on his laptop, kind of knees up like this, doing this. And him and I were back and forth, negotiating a D&O insurance policy for keg restaurants, which of course had to include an employment practices liability. Again, took about 3, 4, 5 hours on a Sunday. We kind of got through it all. David graciously did that for me, and that was the start of a great partnership between myself and the keg restaurants, was because I was able to go back to them when they had a relationship with their old broker supplier for 20 plus years, and they had, unbeknownst to them, they did not have this coverage. And that was the start of our working relationship. Was the first year they were fortunate. I was fortunate enough to have gotten the directors and officers liability bind from Keg Restaurants, and then subsequently the next year after that, I was able to get the entire account. So that's where again, we talk about the relationships with clients, relationships with insurance companies, relationships all around. Is that Dave Melhuish from HDI, currently HDI at the time, it was GCAN, sat in his car on a Sunday afternoon for 4 or 5 hours going through and building this policy for the Keg Restaurants that covered off all of their risks to make sure everything was covered appropriately. And that kind of relationship is very difficult to find. And I'm fortunate I had that at the time, because it just helps gradually. It was good for David, it was good for me, and it was great for the Keg. So great coverage story. That's kind of the back end to the coverage side. So thinking back to a story about having to place an insurance policy, short amount of time for a client that was getting started on a very big project. I was a very good friend of mine by the name of Rob Chetner has a development company which has been a very, very loyal and dedicated client to this company. They had come to us and they had an insurance policy. They had a big project coming up, very large, like a $45-50 million wood frame construction project coming up. And Rob had come to me and I had a look at it, and it was starting very soon. Like it was a very short time period. It was probably about 15 days before the start date of the project. And finally, Rob and I had connected, and I did a full review of the policy. And I didn't like the deductibles. I didn't like some of the exclusions that were on there. And I also didn't like the pricing. So I felt it was a very mediocre quote for him. And I felt that the market at the time, that we definitely could have done better. Again, with construction being one of Wilson Beck's key focuses and one of our specialties of what we do, being a boutique commercial insurance brokerage. I got it. I got all the information. I went through it all front to back that he had sent over. We spent, kind of probably about 2 or 3 days on the phone, just getting all of the information, all the nicks and crannies of the job, what, who, what, where, when, why, how, alternatives, flood mitigation, all of these different things that go into, again, that story about why that construction project should get best in class terms. So we went through it all, got it all done, got all the information done, sat with our placement group at the time. We sat down, and usually you're picking one issue. There's a coverage issue, or there's a pricing issue, or there's a placement issue of the insurance company that it's with. And again, this quote had all of those problems. It had a coverage issue, it had a wording issue, exclusion issues, it had pricing issues, and it had deductible issues. So I felt there was a very big opportunity for us to take what it was and make it better. Gave it to our marketing department, which again, with those relationships that Wilson Beck has with the insurance companies out there, going out on a $50 million project to turn around in, call it 6 or 7 days or less, to get best in class pricing and coverage, is usually a feat. It's a very, very, very tall order that we've been in situations where we've had to do, and we're successful. We're always usually successful, thank God. But so we got out to market again, because the other broker had been out to market. Some of the markets had already been approached and had either declined, or their pricing wasn't respectable enough or reasonable enough for the thing. But we did find some markets that, again, being a specialty insurance broker, construction insurance broker, we tend to have more market than most brokers. So we went out, we found a couple markets to work with. We spent 3-4 days of 5 days of full time on this policy, because it was well in excess of 7 figures of an insurance premium, and so got back the information, got back the quoting, wasn't 100% happy with it. Then we went back and tweaked a few things on some coverages, able to get rid of some exclusions that we weren't very happy with, able to negotiate that pricing out. And when I rekindled with Rob, it was about, call it 3-4 days, because we had to get a certificate of insurance to the lending facility before they started, et cetera. There had to have been a whole sequence of events before they got started. And so we sat down with Rob and we went through it all front to back. We were able to get pricing of approximately 23 to 25% less, deductibles of about half as what they were, and with very little exclusions that weren't right for that project. I can understand there are exclusions that have to be on policies and there are exclusions that have to be on projects, but the exclusions that were on that project wasn't right for that project. It didn't need to be there. So that's a job as a broker in the risk management that we do, is to make a point of getting, again, the best coverage for the project, with the reasonable deductibles for the project, with the right extensions, exclusions for the project, for the right pricing. And so on that, we, again, savings of a 25%, turned it around in call it a time period of about 15 days or less. And because we were able to do that and make it just a better policy for that project, we were successful in winning the business. And Rob was very thankful. He was very appreciative. And then we've done many other projects with Rob and his team since then. So it's been an amazing relationship, and it continues to be. And again, it just goes into that whole marketing piece, that whole behind the scenes piece between when, that producer comes out to see that client. That's a good look into what the back end looks like for this whole process of the amount of work, the amount of team hours that go into not just the producer, but just the placement team, but the account management team and everybody involved. And then the number of hours that goes into it from an insurance company's perspective that they have to invest into putting together the quotes and getting that stuff written, and then the constant back and forth negotiation to make sure that we're bringing to you the best possible policy with the best possible coverage for the best, most market sensitive pricing. Maninder asked me a question about whether or not when you're trying to satisfy your client, and all by trying to get your team to get this prepared in the appropriate fashion, is there tense times with underwriters? Listen, when you're negotiating anything with anything, it's always a tense sometimes, most of the time, is a tense discussion. You're trying to find a balance between having a win-win solution, right? Because you're trying to win for your client. The insurance company is trying to win so that they can get on risk and make money from it. So whenever there's negotiations going on, there always tends to be tense times. But the reality is that we have to understand this is not personal, this is business. We as insurance brokers are in representing our clients and trying to do the best job for our clients, all while trying to keep a good working relationship with our suppliers that we deal with. So again, that it's always that teeter-totter of trying to figure out how hard can you push to what you can get, so that you can focus on maintaining, again, hopefully a win-win-win scenario, right? You want to win for your client, which wins for you as an insurance broker, but also where the insurance company also feels as if they're winning, getting on risk. Because if somebody is losing throughout that process, then usually it brings up, as Maninder was talking about, is those tense feelings, those feelings of, well, he just beat me on that, and nobody feels good, right? It's a matter of building a scenario where you get a win-win-win deal with everybody on, and it doesn't always happen, and it doesn't always end up that way, but that is the goal or the job of an insurance broker, is it's business. And when you're dealing with those underwriters, they have to understand it is also business. Even though you could be friends, the reality, the art of the deal, the art of that negotiation of that deal has to be about business and has to be about bringing a way winning solution. So in conclusion, what we're trying to figure out is how to come up with the best solution, how to come up with the best proposal, how to come up with the best coverage, how to come up with the best pricing, how to come up with it in the appropriate time period, and also marrying your client to the right insurance company that when a claim comes around, that everything's going to get paid. So there's, again, going back to there's the amount of work and time and effort that goes into that process is about trying to figure out the best merriment of all of them. And again, with Wilson Beck having our motto, which again is something that was all very important to me in joining this company, was the "We Care, We Help" motto, is that we have to take that "We Care, We Help," that has to be very evident on both sides of the deal. It has to be very evident that we care and we want to help our clients, but it also has to matter when we're negotiating with the underwriters, because the supplier client and the supplier insurance company relationship both matter to a broker. So you're trying to satisfy two parties. So "We Care, We Help" has to be very prevalent and has to be very understood by that you're doing that for your client. But it also has to be for the insurance company, that they have to realize that they also care and that they want you to help them be successful in winning that account. So it's very, very it's a great business, but it can be at times extremely difficult because the whole goal of an insurance broker is to make sure that clients don't stop working. They don't have to worry about they don't have to worry about making sure that they're waiting on their insurance broker to get them a policy so that they can start working. It's a matter of that broker's job is to make sure that the clients never have to stop because of the insurance. And that broker's job is to make sure that the insurance premiums are within that budget of that client so that it doesn't hinder their cash flow and things like that as well. So it's a it's an art of trying to keep it all together. And so far, two things. I love it. So far, we've been Wilson Beck Alberta and the rest of Wilson Beck companies has been very successful at it. And I think that our relationships with our insurance companies are also top notch, because without any of those relationships, we're not getting the pricing, we're not getting the turnaround time, we're not getting the attention from the insurance companies to be able to satisfy the needs of everybody involved. So thank you for your time. Thank you for everything. Thank you for spending your time listening to this podcast. And I look forward to seeing you guys again.